Hi, we are reading the story, and I know you're noticing that you don't see my bright and shining face, and that's because I have not done my hair yet again. My mascara is not on, and I'm not ready for the camera. So, we're on page 155, and it's been so long that I barely remember where we were. I'm just going to start here. The peace treaty between David and Saul should have settled the matter. That horn honking are the students, the parents dropping off their kids and them getting into traffic conflicts.
Welcome to DC.
Some more honking. But, okay. But, but Saul, always unpredictable, turned on David and pursued once again. Wisely, David retreated with his band of loyalists to Philistine territory, out of Saul's reach. How ironic that David, who was Israel's king-to-be, pitched his tent with the very people who waged war against his own nation and eventually took the life of his closest friend. So that's foreshadowing because Jonathan hasn't perished yet, right?
No.
Okay, yeah, the Philistines will defeat Jonathan. Now the Philistines fought Israel. The Israelites fled before them, and many fell on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines were in hot pursuit of Saul and his sons, and they defeated Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchi-Shua. The fighting grew fierce around Saul, and when the archers overtook him, they wounded him critically. Saul said to the armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and put me to death." I'm trying to figure out a way to say that. "Send me to be with the Lord, or these uncircumcised fellows will come and run me through."
I see Saul doesn't like to use kid-friendly language.
But his armor-bearer was terrified and would not do it, so Saul did it himself. And when the armor-bearer saw that Saul had passed away, when the armor-bearer saw that Saul had passed away, the armor-bearer decided he needed to pass away too. Now remember that we don't decide. Our life is not our own. So the Lord decides when it's time for us to go be with him, when our mission is complete. Okay? That's not our decision. When we give our life to the Lord, that means he has a job for us. He's got a mission, and he'll make the decision when we're finished and complete, and we can go on and be in heaven. When the Israelites along the valley and those across the Jordan saw, I missed a very important part. So it was that Saul and his 3 sons and his armor-bearer all passed away together on the same day. That's a huge thing, because what it looked like was that David was never going to be king. Like, if you looked at it, it's like, he's like from David's perspective, he's like, I'm never going to be king. Even if even if he does die, he has 3 more sons who are lined up behind him to be king. But in one day, the Lord turned it around. Is that rain? Hark the herald angels sing.
Glory to the newborn king. All right. That is rain.
That's crazy.
Raining outside.
But
why did the Lord have to have Jonathan die?
I'm not sure if he had to have Jonathan die. That's a question that the Lord will have to answer. You could answer, and maybe he'll give you the answer. Maybe he'll put it on your heart. I'm not sure, but it might have been, I don't know. The Lord is not the author of death. We must keep that in mind. And we know that death really means, true death is separation from God. It's being separated from God forever.
I'm sure Jonathan has lots of treasures in heaven.
Probably so.
And is up there with David.
It's true. But what this story is showing us is that in just one day, God can turn it all around. So the next day, when the Philistines came, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They sent messengers. The Philistines sent messengers throughout the land. Okay, so throughout their land, it says throughout the land of the Philistines. So they sent it through out their land to proclaim the news in the temple of their idols and among their people that Saul and his sons had been defeated. And they put memorabilia of their defeat, like Saul's armor, in the temples of the idols. Why do you think they put it in the temple of the idols?
As a gift.
That's true. That could be for a gift. I was going to say to show that their idols had done it. Like, look what our idols have done. When the people of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all their valiant men marched through the night to Beth-shan. They took down the memorabilia, and David grieved deeply over not only Jonathan's death, but also over Saul's. So that shows David's heart that he wasn't delighting in the fact that Saul had passed away in the battle.
I think that would have been a little harder for me
Because of how Saul had treated.
that I'm finally being king now.
Well, I will say God had been walking David a long time through different things, showing David that it had to be him, and that it wasn't because of anything David had done that he chose him, that it was God's decision and to trust God. And I don't know, it's a long, humbling walk that David had to go through. Same walk that Joseph had to go through. Very humbling.
Mama?
Yes.
Where was Saul's wife during all of this?
Good question. I don't know. I haven't even heard a reference to Saul's wife. Have you?
No, since he had a son.
He had 3.
Oh, 3.
Okay, so over the course of time, God directed David to assert his calling as king. That must have been scary for David. His own tribe of Judah came to Hebron to anoint him king over the house of Judah. But it wasn't until after a 7-year struggle between David and those who had been loyal to Saul's son Ishbosheth that David was made king over all of Israel. So it sounds like Saul still had a son alive, Ishbosheth. Maybe, I'm not sure. Soon afterward, David twice led the Israelites in a decisive victory over the Philistines. This period also saw one of David's most important accomplishments. He defeated the Jebusites, who lived in Jerusalem, making it Israel's national and spiritual capital. David was concerned about more than just the military success. He loved God and wanted his nation to love God too. David's passion for God led him to retrieve the Ark of the Covenant that had been stored in the house of Abinadab. It was a joyous parade of people that set out to bring the Ark to its new home in Jerusalem, the city of David. I know we're going to have to talk about that. That's a whole nother story. But this does show how it's important who leads you, because David's passion for the Lord is spilling over into the passion for the people. Now, keep in mind that they only have a king because why?
They
demanded a king. The Lord said, I'm your king. They said, no, we want, you must have misunderstood. We want a king we can see with our eyes, a real king. So that's the only reason they have a king. But after they have now demanded a king, who their king is super important, because the heart of the king will direct.
I wonder what it was like without a leader.
The heart of the king will direct the people, either good or bad. What did you say, Kaylin?
I wonder what it was like without a leader, like the president. I wonder how that feels like.
They had a leader. Moses was the leader. Samuel was the leader. But they weren't listening to the Lord. They were focused on, they were supposed to have gone in and defeated and utterly destroyed all the inhabitants of the promised land, either driven them out, utterly driven them out. They were supposed to have done that, and they did not do that. They did not obey the instruction. They obeyed it in part. Remember, how do we obey? All the way, right away, with a happy heart. They did not do it all the way, and they definitely didn't do it right away, and they did not do it with a happy heart. So, God was their leader, and they were now this is just my personal opinion, because God had been communicating with them through Moses, then through Joshua, but the amount of communication, I believe, started to slow down when they were showing what?
When they were
showing that they weren't obeying. Because it's like, I'm not going to continue to say the same thing that I've already given you the instruction. If you would like the next instruction, do the first instruction. So that they're not having the same amount of communication with the Lord, because they're not doing what he's asked. Now, he did have Samuel, and the people were, instead of focusing on obeying, were focusing on the culture around them, that culture that looks so appealing. They're like, oh, look at them with their king. Look at it. They get to like strut about with gold, and look at them strutting with that beautiful, headdress. And they wanted to be like them instead of doing what the Lord asked.
No, I mean like when they had a civilization, like they had armies, they had towns.
This is what I mean.
Oh.
So they had that their original instruction after they came out of the wilderness was to utterly drive out all of the people that were enemies, the evil inhabitants. And that was God's hand of judgment coming against those people. Because remember, who are those people?
idol worshippers.
They were, but who are they? They're descendants of
Cain?
Noah.
Oh, right.
They're descendants of Noah. So at some point, they did know who the true God was.
Oh.
This is the hand of the Lord coming in judgment. And before they were going to set up their entire cities, their civilizations, they were supposed to drive out the inhabitants. They didn't do step one. So there wasn't a time when they were having a civilization that was just run by the Lord, because they neglected to do step one. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
I think so.
So they were just kind of like floundering in a little bit of chaos because they hadn't done the first instruction. So they couldn't even get to the second instruction. Before they could even get to instruction number 2, they were demanding a king, and demanding it so much that the Lord honored their decision. He's like, well, if you're not going to have your heart obedient to me, I'm not going to demand that I be your king.
Wow, step number 1 was long.
It was, and it required that they walk closely with the Lord, and they failed to do it.
I actually read that on one of my prayer books that God said, if someone is like really set to do something, that he won't go against them.
He lets you choose. He said, choose you this day. Choose life or death, that you and your descendants may live. And if your decision, he lets you choose. For the blessings and the cursings, you choose. You can choose the cursings if you want to. He gives you the answer. He said, just in case you're confused, choose life. But if you want to choose death, it's your decision. All right. Goodbye, people.